deep dive is based on work by author and lecturer Lee Gale Gruen.
Lee Gale's goal is to help you find joy and fulfillment in retirement.
Have you ever found yourself just completely drained, emotionally exhausted maybe, or just plain down after spending time with someone? Someone whose persistent negativity just seems to cast a shadow over everything. Well, today we're diving into a really powerful blog post from Lee Gale Gruen. It's called Drained by Negativity: When Someone Else's Depression Impacts Your Joy. She published it on her blog, Reinventing Yourself in Retirement, which is full of some pretty insightful stuff.
Yeah, and just to be clear up front, our mission today isn't really about, diagnosing anyone. We're not offering medical advice here. It's more about unpacking Gruen's perspective. It's very personal, sometimes quite difficult, but it's about how we navigate our own joy, our own well-being, when we're faced with others who are consistently negative or perhaps showing depressive behaviors.
Okay, so where does she start? Well, Gruen kicks off with this compelling idea about responsibility. Our own responsibility, really, to craft the kind of life we want. And importantly, the consequences when the lifestyle we forge becomes, off-putting to others, as she puts it. It's a challenging thought right from the get-go, isn't it?
It really is. And what's quite insightful, I think, is her nuanced view on depression itself. She's careful about it. She acknowledges, it ranges from mild to clinical. She mentions the research into chemical imbalances, all the different factors, things like life events, medical conditions, even genetics, personality type, social circumstances. Lots of things can cause or worsen it. And she expresses real compassion for people afflicted by it. That's important context for what comes next.
Right, so she sets that foundation of compassion. But then she pivots. She talks about the profound impact and often, the painful impact this dynamic has on us, the people around the negativity. Gruen describes it so vividly, feeling sucked under by their quicksand personality.
Wow. I think, unfortunately, maybe a lot of us can relate to that feeling. And she highlights how hard it is to pull back, because you might get confronted or face guilt trips. It makes creating distance really, really difficult.
Exactly. And this is where her own experience really brings it home. Gruen points out this difficult truth. When depressive behavior becomes sort of a persistent lifestyle and is just dumped on anyone they encounter, the person doing it often doesn't really consider the effect on the receiver. She states pretty bluntly they most likely won't change, and that their sad sack personality is suffocating to be around. It's harsh, but it reflects that feeling of being drained.
It really does. It's like this asymmetrical energy thing you mentioned. Our attempts to lift them up might fail, but their negativity just pulls us down so easily.
That's precisely it. And she illustrates this with a really vivid personal story about a relative, someone who apparently drags her whining and perpetual poor me story from one family member to another. Gruen calls this person a nonstop rain cloud, just constantly sucking the joy out of her. So much so that most people just started avoiding her. It paints a very clear picture.
And the crucial realization she comes to, based on these experiences, is this. She says she's never successful in pulling them up, but they are stellar in dampening her spirits. It really underscores that sometimes, no matter how good our intentions are, the dynamic is just fundamentally unbalanced. You can't carry that burden forever.
So that powerful realization, it leads her somewhere pretty drastic. A bold solution, definitely tough. She decides to cut some people loose, and she's very clear why. To protect her own upbeat, positive, joyous life. She says she refuses to let anyone ruin it. That's a serious act of self-preservation.
It absolutely is. And it seems rooted in this underlying philosophy she has, this belief that, quote, we must all bring something to the table in our interactions. She basically says she doesn't want to interact with people whose only purpose is to bum others out, whether they do it passively or, aggressively. It definitely challenges us to think about what reciprocal energy means in our relationships.
Yeah, it does. And she's incredibly honest about the guilt, the great guilt this choice brings. It's not an easy decision, but she holds firm. Her resolve is that do so I must to save myself from being pulled under along with them. And she concludes pretty powerfully that letting that happen does neither one of us any good. You really feel the weight of that decision. So, okay, what does all this mean for you listening right now? Gruen's blog post, it really forces us to confront a deeply uncomfortable truth about self-preservation within our relationships.
Yeah, expanding on that, Gruen's experience, it really highlights how necessary it can be to protect our own emotional space, especially when you're faced with negativity that's just persistent and draining. Empathy, compassion, of course, they're vital. We need those. But her story is a reminder that there's often a line. And sometimes, for our own well-being, that line just has to be drawn. Because like she said, getting pulled under too, that does neither one of us any good.
So here's something for you to mull over, maybe think about later. How do you define what it means for someone to bring something to the table in your life? And where do you draw that line between supporting others who are struggling and, well, safeguarding your own well-being? It's a tough balance.